The first 3 seconds hit like a hammer. No insignia, no warning. Just 2 men waiting in the corridor. Eyes too sharp, too practiced to be ordinary escorts. They didn't call her by name. They called her by rank Lieutenant Commander Elena Cross. And in that instant, she knew something was wrong. They hadn't come for a clerk. They had come for the ghost she once was. Outpost Ironveil sat on the desert's edge like a scar sand-scoured walls, antenna masts bent by wind, and the red spine of Bloodspire Cliff rising 340 feet into a storm-colored sky. The air carried grit that never left your teeth, and the smell of oil clung to every breath. This was no fortress, it was a wound carved into the high desert. Inside the command center, Colonel Derek Kincaid waited. A map of the training sector spread across his desk. He looked at Cross the way men look at equipment they don't expect to last evaluating. Dismissing, already certain of the answer. "Quartermaster Corps," he said. Voice flat. 20 years of pushing paper and counting bullets. No combat commendations, no ribbons worth mentioning. If the Army had a shelf for dead weight, you'd be on it. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They landed heavier for being spoken like fact. Outside, the storm wind rattled the windows, underlining every syllable. Cross stood at attention, face unreadable. But her gaze flicked once toward the cliff burning red in the late sun. Others saw rock. She saw something else, a vertical battlefield. A problem she had solved before. Kincaid mistook her silence for surrender. "Your job is Depot 4. Inventory, logs, paperwork. Stay away from the training sector and stay off that cliff." She gave a single nod, clipped, precise. Nothing more, no protest, no defense. But when she turned to leave, the escorts shifted, uneasy, as though they had just stood too close to something dangerous. Kincaid didn't notice. He had already written her off. "You're watching Stories Unseen. Sound off in the comments your city, your country, and subscribe now to stay in formation for the next mission." Depot 4 smelled of oil, dust, and canvas. It was the place every soldier avoided unless ordered there. A warehouse of crates stacked like tombstones. That was where Warrant Officer Elena Cross was sent. A punishment disguised as assignment. She moved through the dim aisles with a datapad in one hand, her gloves brushing over stenciled numbers, ammunition, gauze, fuel cells. She logged each with quiet precision. No wasted motion, no complaint. The younger corporals assigned to help her, Evans and Diaz, expected a sluggish clerk with trembling hands. What they saw instead was efficiency sharper than any drill sergeant. Evans whispered once, thinking she couldn't hear she's faster than the scanner. He wasn't wrong. Yet it wasn't just the inventory she was cataloging. On her breaks, when the others lit cigarettes or swapped stories, Cross stepped outside and walked the perimeter. She never strayed far, never drew attention, but her eyes worked constantly, mapping the world. She noted the blind arc beneath the West Tower's floodlight, where a man could vanish in shadow. She timed the patrol's circuit, counting how long the gate was unwatched when 2 privates passed each other mid-shift. She stood still when the desert wind rose, feeling how it carved whirlwinds along the motor pool. These weren't idle observations. They were the kind a soldier makes when every detail could mean survival. To Evans and Diaz, it looked like habit. To Cross, it was memory. At night, when the depot lights buzzed low, she sat at the workbench repairing small things no one else noticed: a cracked sight mount, a frayed sling, a loose coupling on a comms unit. Each fix was done with the same calm that unnerved the men who watched her. She worked like someone who had done it in worse places, under worse conditions. Word began to drift through the outpost. Not rumors, exactly just murmurs. The clerk who never tired. The woman who finished 3 days of inventory in 1. The warrant officer who never raised her voice, yet carried a silence that bent the room around her. And always, when she stepped outside, Her gaze slid to the Bloodspire Cliff. Soldiers laughed about the wall, cursed it after failed training climbs. Cross never spoke of it. She simply studied it with the quiet intensity of someone reviewing a problem she already knew the answer to. By the third week, Evans had stopped joking around her. Diaz, who once called her paperwork ghost, now trailed her with awkward respect. Neither of them could explain it, but both felt the same thing: she wasn't fading into the background. She was waiting. It began as a shiver on the horizon, a bruised smear of copper and ash against the desert sky. Then the wind rose, dragging sand in sheets that battered Outpost Ironveil with a sound like endless applause. Within minutes, the storm swallowed the base whole. The air turned metallic, charged, every grain of dust carrying the taste of iron and ozone. Communications died in an instant. Screens flickered, radios spat static. The SATCOM dish outside spun uselessly, its signal smothered. The Harris PRC-117G relay in the command post gave a last wheeze and fell silent. No uplink, no command, no lifeline. And then the shout came. Man down, Sergeant Riley lay on a stretcher, his uniform soaked dark near the ribs. Shrapnel had found him during the morning patrol. His breathing rattled, shallow, each rise of his chest slower than the last. He had hours at most, and without a medevac. Not even that. Colonel Kincaid barked for options, his voice sharp to mask the edge of fear, but every channel was dead. Waiting for the storm to pass meant waiting for Riley to die. That was when Elena Cross moved. She wasn't in the command center shouting theories. She was in Depot 4, bent over a generator that had coughed itself to death under the storm's pressure. While others cursed the blackout, she had her sleeves rolled, copper wires stripped between her fingers, a paperclip, electrical tape, nothing more. 90 seconds later, the generator roared back to life, spitting a dim but steady hum into the depot. The lights flickered on, and the soldiers nearest her just stared. But power was not the problem. Communication was, and the only chance lay in a junction box bolted into the cliffside 24 feet above the ground. Normally, maintenance crews reached it on ladders during calm weather. In this storm, it was suicide. Kincaid's staff dismissed it immediately. No one can make that climb in this. No one answered, except Cross. She didn't speak, didn't argue. She simply closed her toolkit with deliberate calm, as if the decision had been made long ago, outside the depot doors. The storm howled and flung sand like shrapnel. Sparks snapped across the sky where static lightning clawed at the clouds. Evans and Diaz followed her with their eyes, unsettled by the way she moved, unhurried, precise, like someone rehearsing steps already memorized. In the command center, panic built with every passing second. Riley's breathing was ragged, the medic's hands slick with blood. Kincaid slammed his fist on the table. "We're blind and we're deaf. Unless someone gets that junction online, we're signing his death certificate." And as if summoned, the door creaked open. Cross stood there, dust already in her hair, her gloves pulled tight. She said, "Only one thing I can climb." For a moment, the room froze. Then Kincaid laughed, short and bitter, as if to push back the impossible. "You, that wall will kill you before you're halfway." But her eyes never left his. Calm. Absolute. She didn't flinch. Somewhere in the storm, a sheet of corrugated metal tore loose, slammed against the ground with a gunshot crack. Everyone jumped. Everyone but her. And in that silence, for the first time, doubt slid into Kincaid's face. The storm clawed at the outpost like it meant to erase it from the map. Dust hammered the floodlights. Lightning bled red against the cliff face, and the air shook with static. Men pressed against windows to watch as Elena Cross stepped into it. Rope coiled at her hip. Carabiner and a field modem clutched in one hand. Colonel Kincaid's laugh carried no humor. She'll be lucky to take 3 steps off the ground, but no one answered him. Every eye was on her. Cross didn't sprint. She approached the Bloodspire with the steady gait of someone walking into a memory. At the base, she planted one gloved hand against the stone, head tilted as if listening. Then she moved fluid, economical, no wasted motion. The first 10 feet vanished in a blur, a shift of weight, a hook of her boot, and she was already climbing faster than any drill instructor's stopwatch could track. Dust whipped around her like smoke from an explosion, but she threaded through it. Her body pressed to the cliff as if the wall itself sheltered her. "Look at her speed," Evans whispered. Voice cracking. "She's not climbing," Diaz muttered. "She's running." The camera feed jittered in the storm, static cutting across the frame. Still, the timestamp was clear. 12 seconds, and she was halfway. A jagged burst of lightning flared across the sky, painting her silhouette in searing white. For a heartbeat, it looked less like a soldier on a wall and more like a phantom tearing upward through fire. A gust slammed her sideways. The whole room watching gasped. For an instant, she dangled by one hand, rope trailing loose at her hip. Then, without panic, she swung back in, boots hitting stone, body moving again as if the near fall had been part of the rhythm all along. 17 seconds. The junction box loomed just above her, a dull metal shape crusted with sand. She reached it, clipped in, and hauled the modem from her pouch. Lightning strobed again, briefly revealing her face. Calm, focused. The same expression she wore doing inventory in Depot 4. 22 seconds. That was what the feed showed when the green light blinked alive on the PRC-117G console in the command post. For a moment, no one believed it. The relay sang back to life. Comms spiking, static clearing into the sharp crackle of contact. Blackhawk inbound. The headset operator shouted, "Eyes wide, we've got medevac." The room erupted, but not in cheers. In stunned silence. Men looked at each other, then back at the screen, as if afraid to say aloud what they'd just seen. Kincaid's smirk had died somewhere between second 12 and 22. Now he stood rigid, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the impossible image of the warrant officer he dismissed as dead weight. She shouldn't have been able to do that. One lieutenant muttered. Kincaid didn't answer. He couldn't, because every man in the room had seen it with their own eyes. And still, none of them could quite believe it. The storm broke at dawn. What remained was silence, a base scoured raw by sand and static. Its soldiers blinking into pale morning light. The Blackhawk thundered away with Riley aboard, its rotor wash tearing new scars into the dust. For the first time in hours, Outpost Ironveil could breathe, but the command post was still frozen, its walls holding the echo of what they had seen. 22 seconds. No harness, no hesitation. An impossible climb pulled off by the one soldier they'd all dismissed. The door opened, and Cross stepped back inside. Dust streaked her uniform. Her gloves frayed, but her eyes steady as ever. She set the empty modem case on a table, as if returning a checked-out tool. Nothing in her face suggested triumph. Nothing demanded thanks. She moved like the moment had cost her nothing. Kincaid tried to speak, for a man used to owning every room. The effort showed in the tightness of his throat. His officers watched him, waiting for a rebuke, a lecture, anything to reassert the order that had just shattered. Instead, his words failed. It was Master Sergeant Grayson Hale who broke the silence. He slid a worn folder onto the table, its edges frayed from years of handling. Kincaid opened it and paled. The documents inside weren't supply records. They were redacted mission reports, high-altitude infiltrations, hostage extractions off cliff faces and skyscrapers, training modules on vertical warfare, authored by a single name, Cross, call sign Shadow Viper. The room absorbed the truth in silence. Every soldier there had heard the rumors an operator who taught Tier 1 units how to move like ghosts across rock and steel. A legend whispered through the Special Forces pipeline, and she had been here all along, cataloging ammo crates. No announcement followed, no speech. Kincaid stepped forward, shoulders stiff, and brought his hand up in a salute. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, slow, and it held longer than regulation. One by one. The others followed. Cross didn't return it. She only inclined her head, then turned toward the door. Outside, the sun burned through thinning clouds, striking the cliff that still wore her footprints. Evans, the youngest of them, hurried after her with a steaming cup of coffee. He didn't speak when he handed it over. He didn't need to. Cross accepted it with a quiet nod. Then she sat back at her desk in Depot 4, fingers already flipping open the next manifest, as if dawn hadn't revealed who she truly was, as if the legend and the clerk were one and the same and both still had work to do.